You're listening to Beast Over Burden, powered by Barbell Logic.
We're Niki and Andrew, your personal professional coaches.
We help you take control of your fitness through hard but doable training and nutrition practices that fit your busy life.
Build a stronger, healthier version of yourself with lifelong habits. Hey, and welcome to Beast Over Burden, powered by Barbell Logic. Niki Sims here, CXO of Barbell Logic and TKC, also a strength and nutrition coach. With me is Andrew Jackson.
Good afternoon.
Arguably your favorite Andrew Jackson.
Well, unless you got a $20 bill with Andrew Jackson on it in your pocket, you're probably preferring that version.
The challenge for us is to provide more value than a $20 bill that's in your pocket.
Seems fair.
Which we're definitely going to do today. So continuing with our potentially lifelong discussion of training for physical freedom, we were having a chat earlier today about the roadmap to physical freedom. It's not just a 3-month purchase. It's not a few weeks of training. I believe that there is a lot more that must occur before you really earn it, honestly. So we're going to talk in more detail about what that map looks like. What are the steps? What are the systems? What are the behaviors? The voluntary hardship.
It's like the front page of your fantasy book where it's got the map, the road map to physical freedom, except instead of Middle Earth, it's physical freedom.
Yes. Where do we start? Do we start with what the end point looks like?
Well, I feel like that's what we've done so far. Really, that's where I thought that value from this conversation would come, is that so far we've been talking a lot about what physical freedom looks like in nutrition and training.
And what it looks like when you've achieved it.
Right. And the last episode, a real practical detailing of kind of how I've adjusted my program on the fly, given a lot of different circumstances and travel and issues and injuries, which is the culmination of years of training and experience, coaching, and understanding physiology and biomechanics and all of these things. But you brought up a really good point, which is that you have to spend some time building experience, training, and understanding different programming strategies and how to use different exercises and different equipment to be able to train for strength and have that sense of which variables to care about and which ones don't. And so I really like the idea of talking through what it looks like to get to a point where you have that freedom at your fingertips to adjust. Because you also, I think, made a really good point that I'm assuming the listener who doesn't feel like they have physical freedom is going to the gym, or sometimes going to the gym with varying levels of consistency, and either not getting the results they want, or getting no results, or getting results for a little while but having a hard time continuing to integrate it in their life because they keep hitting these roadblocks or feeling stuck and not sure how to progress. So with this discussion, I think the goal is to help people understand, while we all want to get to a point where we have this sense of physical freedom and ability to flex their training, that there are probably some milestones and some structured training progressions that people need to go through before they get to a point that they're able to intelligently adjust their program and stay flexible. Otherwise, they're going to feel like they're probably spinning their wheels.
Yeah, that would favor the all or nothing mentality, which I don't think fits into having physical freedom.
Right. Yeah. Another person that I think, if they try to throw themselves into that without really knowing what they're doing, is going to be all about one thing or the other for 6 to 8 weeks, maybe 3 months if they're lucky. And then they'll totally derail because they can't keep doing the thing.
Yeah.
We've talked about before, something's better than nothing. Some things are better than other things, and nothing works forever. So you do need to, at some point, understand the principles enough to be able to guide your training in a way that you can keep going forever, because we want to be able to continue to train. So what does that look like to you? What do you think somebody needs to go through? I keep having the Karate Kid analogy go through my head. Like, what are the wax on, wax off, paint the fence?
Well, I kind of think of it, we've made some parallels between this and financial freedom. One thing that I think of is you have to have really built up your savings account, your emergency fund, before you have as much freedom. In this context, that means you have to have built muscle. That takes a long time. In the beginning, you can demonstrate adaptation pretty quickly with how much weight you put on the bar. And by that, I mean 6 months. You can also experience a lot of change, and you've thrown out the time frame, 18 to 24 months. So a lot of change occurs during that relatively short time frame. And that occurs because of what we've talked about, the principles of organized training, using hard but doable, simple, effective, and going for the adaptation of increased muscle mass. So if you have not done nearly everything you can to build muscle, I do not believe you can achieve physical freedom. You don't have to go through massive weight gain, and you don't have to do supplements. But I really do believe that your mindset should be, how do I build or how do I maintain muscle? And at least, how do I understand that by not training, by doing this thing that I'm going to do for the next few months, I am probably going to lose some muscle. I really believe that muscle is at the core of this because it is the key to longevity. So someone who has gone to the gym forever, but hasn't been on a structured program, they stop going to the gym during the summertime. They're drawn into things like quick cuts, weight loss challenges, shiny new object syndrome all the time. I don't think that is the key to physical freedom, because you haven't learned anything or you haven't learned what works. And that applies in nutrition as well. When you rack up a bunch of habits and then you've done something long enough that you feel what those changes in behavior can do for you. So physical freedom with nutrition we've talked about is like, oh, I went on this trip, I ate and drank everything. And instead of just being in like this huge frustrated pickle of like, well, now I'm overweight, what do I need to do? Like, do I need to start training for a marathon? It's like, no, I need to go back to eating these things that made me feel good. And you need to have done that enough times to know that it works. So big component is you need to build muscle, and you need to have worked really hard to build muscle. Or that would be part one. The other thing is the routine of it being in your life. Like, you're never training or not training. It's in there. And once you've taken a lot of time to build muscle, which you will have done after 18 to 24 months, it takes much longer for you to lose that muscle. But someone who hasn't intentionally trying to build muscle, they will lose whatever muscle they've gained much more quickly. Which is why I really believe to have more wiggle room in how you're spending your time being physical, the more muscle you have in your bank account, the more variety you have. And the more option you have to say, like, you know what, I'm going on a cruise for 3 weeks. I'm not going to be able to train that much, but it's okay. Because of your systems that you have in place in your life, when you get back from your cruise, you're going to go right back into it. You're not always wondering, how am I going to get started again? What should I do now? Should I do something different? And fighting that battle, you just do it. You just get back into training. So it's the foundation of building muscle, and then it's the routine of it being in your life that I think are completely essential.
That makes sense to me and fits with how I would describe it with a little bit more context. I would say 18 to 24 months of structured, supervised training, meaning a coach is involved, or 5 to 10 years of trying to do it on your own.
Wow. Time to value. It's very different, one of those.
And I'll explain why, both from personal experience as a coach and as a lifter myself.
Yeah.
The first 3 to 6 months is going to be predominantly newbie gains, which are neuromuscular in nature, meaning pretty much no matter what you do, this is that something is better than nothing phase,
Yeah.
where you can make some progress doing pretty much anything, even if it's, riding a bike a whole bunch or whatever random exercises you decide to do. You might see a little bit of progress there. And a little bit of, if it's like a structured add 5 pounds every week to the same short list of exercises, like our novice linear progression that we typically use, then you're probably also going to see a little bit of moderate muscle mass gain, assuming that you're eating to support that. And the other component that occurs in structured supervised training within 18 to 24 months beyond that initial newbie gain phase is where the programming is still essentially linear. The curve starts to flatten out, or the line starts to flatten out. Slope is less steep because you're not just getting more skilled at moving in those patterns, but you're having to develop more muscle. So I agree with you there that by 18 to 24 months of structured supervised training, you have developed the initial motor skills of the basic barbell lifts. I'm also assuming for most of our listeners, we're talking about structured barbell training. You've probably overcome some setbacks in the form of minor tweaks, maybe an injury or two, maybe some life circumstance trainings.
You got COVID six times.
Illnesses.
Yeah.
And your coach has probably helped you, or you've experienced what they do to help you kind of navigate returning from some of those setbacks. And your programming has increased in complexity enough that, because again, it's not just adding 5 pounds, it's not a straight linear progression. You've probably had to spread out the stress into weeks and probably even by that point, months or multiple months. So you've had to make an experience more than just the most basic programming to progress for that long of a period of time. So when I say structured supervised training, I'm making the assumption that you are consistent training somewhere between 2 to, whatever it is, up to 7 days a week, every week, just about, with the exception of a couple of maybe taking a week off here and there. So I agree with your point on having the habit. And I think that's actually a huge component to the equation, that what I find hardest with people who have not been training for most of their life that start to try to train is that by the time you're in your 30s or 40s, you've built up a whole bunch of life habits and components that don't include training, that you need a year or two to figure out how to wedge training back into that life, unless you've just been a steady gym goer that's spinning your wheels. That person is now going to take that hour plus at the gym and start making gains. There's also a whole bunch of people out there who need to figure out how to incorporate structured training into their life, even when it's not optimal for it. And I think that 18 to 24 months of supervised structured training is going to accelerate that learning curve.
Yeah.
And I'll say this all the time, like, you don't need a coach to do this. It's just going to take 2 to 3 times as many iterations, as many failure learning loops to acquire that same amount of experience, because it's going to take you 2 to 3 times to troubleshoot problems that a coach will solve for you instantaneously.
And that's when your ability to be confident in yourself is very compromised. When you've been sick for 2 weeks and you're like, how do I get back into this?
Right.
That's a really tough place to be. When you tweak your shoulder and you're like, how do I train around this and keep training? That's a really tough place to be. When you have a new baby in the family, nobody's sleeping, you have 17 minutes 3 times a week.
Right.
How do you train and it becomes effective? Like, those are the times when it would be probably emotionally easier to just not have to deal with it. But if you have a coach, they're just like, don't worry, bro, I got you. Do this. It just keeps you going. It's so valuable.
Right. Because they've done that with, hopefully, at least the coaches here at Barbell Logic, done that with hundreds of clients.
Yeah.
Or we have a coach who's able to jump in with more expertise with whatever your scenario is. So I find that most of my clients that I've worked with for that 18 to 24 month period of time have probably gotten to a point where they have enough experience with how I adjust their programs to have the most basic strategy for training the rest of their life. Like they could, if they wanted to and didn't get bored of just doing the same cycles over and over and over again with, over a long arc of time, the weight might go up, might go down, whatever circumstances are happening in their life. But they could literally just keep repeating that workout over and over again. What happens after the 18 to 24 month window tends to be where they start moving into some form of a more advanced programming where there's more variables at play. I start expanding the range of exercises that they're doing. So we start learning new motor unit patterns, and that starts kind of resetting the process again. Or we might start playing around with different set and rep combinations, just getting more creative there. Not because it's some magic solution that is going to be more effective than the big but boring stuff. But it's just at some point you want to learn different things. It's fun.
Yeah.
It does challenge you in different ways. Maybe you start playing around with more unilateral work or more weightlifting movements and getting away from kind of the very basic movements. But I think of that 18 to 24 months as the paint the fence phase, where you're going to learn just the most basic stuff that you could carry on for the rest of your life and get the beginning of the baseline. But I think it would be probably another, it could be another 5 to 10 years that you could be expanding your palette of exercises, programming strategies, more complex usually because they're more serious injuries that pop up just because as you get older, things and get you to lift more weight, you're going to run into more complicated injuries to work around and resolve. And that could go for, I still get a coach, right? And I've been doing this for 25 years, but that's more because I value outsourcing thinking about it. I have a very wide palette of exercises and strategies, but I think you could easily spend 5 to 10 years working with somebody to build out the fully built out physical freedom set of skill sets. And it's really kind of you could learn an infinite number of things if you want to go down the rabbit hole of
absolutely
kettlebells or whatever specific exercise thing that you want to study.
Yeah.
But to get to what I would consider what most people need to be physically free, totally agree with you. The kind of minimum barrier to entry is probably 18 to 24 months of structured training or 3 to 6 years on your own.
And then 5 more years of proving it.
Yeah. And then, the rest of it, you're just kind of constantly having to prove it to yourself for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Because, at any point in time, I've seen people that trained for 20 years hit some wall and they lose their why, or it could be a radical enough life change that they don't know how to incorporate it. I think that's probably the most common is if you were in some phase of your life, you hit your 30s, maybe you're settled into your job, you got your family mostly established, maybe by your mid 30s, and you kind of hit this 10 to 20 year period where things are pretty
trying to keep
similar.
Everybody fed. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're kind of grinding through that phase, and then maybe the kids graduate or you retire or you have some major injury. That's another one where things reset and you're kind of back to like, oh man, how do I reset from ground zero? That's another scenario where a coach can really come and help you accelerate back in. That I do think is a part of physical freedom, like being able to come back from a major life change. That's something that you probably have to either have some coaching or some help with, or have enough experience with your training that you know how to go all the way back to zero and maybe even learn how to do a lift where you're not able to do it the way you used to.
Right. Yeah, I definitely know something about that. One thing I think about is I find I have more peace around not being super rigid and structured in my training. We talked last week about rolling with the punches.
Mhm.
And I remember a lot of times when it was just like, well, if I can't train, I'm not going to go. And I'm not going to go on this hike because that's going to sacrifice everything I'm doing in the gym. And it's
Or if
almost
you
a bit
can't
more of a
hit the numbers that you
Right.
should be
if I
able to hit.
shouldn't- Yeah, if I'm not hitting what I
then
should
I'm not even
be,
going to train.
it's much more of like a scarcity mindset. And what's different now is like, yeah, I know I'm not going to be training like I was the last 6 weeks, but it's also going to be okay. Like there's
Yep.
just so much more peace. And I think that correlates so well with freedom. It's just like being able to be at peace with your decisions. And so you're able to bounce back. Like even when it's a decision that was made for you and you got hurt, it's still very emotional, but you have proven to yourself that there can be a way forward. It's just different than what you thought it was going to look like.
That just happened to me yesterday, where I think I've mentioned it in the last episode or two that I've been dealing with a little bit of a knee situation. I think it's a sprained MCL. For a long time, every time I got to the bottom of the squat, it was sort of like, how bad's it going to hurt? I was having a hard time getting tension. I was having a hard time pushing, and the weights were really reduced. And in the past, I would have gotten really frustrated by that and felt like I was not being productive with my training. And I would feel a lot of resistance going into training. Like I'm not even using my time well. And just felt like I was buying time or something till things got better. And I don't know. It was very like the mentality, the emotional toll was noticeable. And yesterday I had 190 kilos for 2 triples programmed and some back off sets. And I'm warming up and it was feeling good, but I got to 170. I was like, I know today's not the day to go another 20 kilos. So I just did 2x3 at 170 and backed off to 150, did 3x5 because they were heavy but doable. They were heavier than the previous week and there was no pain. And I know, given my experience, that's a good training day.
Whereas maybe like 6 years ago, it would have been like, bag the session. What am I doing this for?
Either that or I would have forced 190.
It, yeah.
And yeah, I think I would have made them much more difficult. I would have tried to make them much more harder. I probably would have pushed the edge. I would have redlined the pain a little bit more. And there's a time and place for that next week, I probably need to make sure that I nudge that a little bit further. Because I do kind of think that effective rehab is sort of a process of feathering the symptoms a little bit. But I wasn't frustrated by that session. I got done and felt like that was a great day. That was exactly the day that I needed and wanted. And I also have other stuff going on outside the gym right now where it's not maybe I could have hit 190, but that's just not my priority right now to sink all of my physical and emotional energy into hitting the exact numbers that I was supposed to hit. So I just told my coach that 170 was my weight for the day. And I did a lot of good work, did 5 hard sets. And even at 170 and 150 were my back off sets, it's like, those are well over 60% of my normal work sets. They were, 80 to 90% of my work sets that were programmed. That's still a great day. And that lack of emotional friction is, I think, why I'm able to keep showing up so consistently. Because it's not this big discipline equals freedom.
Judgment day. Yeah.
I'm doing what actually felt really good for the day. It was hard. It tested my limits a little bit. I got to squat and I moved on with my day. Just kind of like done. It was like a 45-minute workout. That to me is physical freedom.
And that calls back to what you've talked about before, the ability to zoom out in time, be like, I could be completely guided by my emotions here and do a tantrum session, which
right.
I know a thing or two about, and gone really heavy or just
certainly done that.
Cried and left the gym.
Yeah.
But you were able to zoom out and think about where you've come from, like what was going on previous weeks and where you're going.
Right.
And that's much better. Being smart.
Yeah. And to get there, though, to your point, took 15 years of structured training, almost never missing a session, having many tantrum days, beating my head against the wall many times, trying to rehab from a knee injury for years, a back injury for years, a shoulder injury for years. And this being another one that I will get through so much faster than I did previously. But it's because I had those experiences and have coached through so many people through those experiences that I'm now able to kind of manage that along with my coach, also kind of helping with his perspective. So yeah, we can sit here and talk about it at our stage of the game, but I think as we started the call or the recording, purpose here is to help people see kind of that bigger picture and what it might take to get there.
Yep. It doesn't happen overnight, and that's okay. Anything else you want to add?
Ways that people that don't have physical freedom are describing their situation or that they might be feeling right now.
I would say someone who trains for a few months and then leaves the gym for months and comes back and is like, what do I do now? Like, I don't know. I go to the gym all the time. Like, I'm just going to do their gym thing. Whenever they leave the gym, they're like starting back from zero again. That's not physical freedom. Even though you're doing a lot of things, I still think that if you are always in that state of building back from zero, that's something different. And then I think it's someone who, if we're in our 50s and 60s and we didn't spend decades building muscle and we didn't know how to maintain it, or at least slow down the rate of it going away, that is not physical freedom. That is you being more of, I guess, a victim of your body. And of course, there is going to be a phase of life where our body is just like, sorry, bro, I'm on my way out. And then at that point, we're just doing our best to hold on. But if you don't have that muscle at that phase in your life and all you've been worrying about for 20 years is losing 10 pounds of body fat, that is not physical freedom, because now you don't have what you need to maintain your independence. And that doesn't sound like physical freedom to me.
I've been noticing increasingly the number of people in their 30s and 40s feeling that way is going up. I don't know if that's a generational shift that's happening where there's just less physical activity in general in people's in their teens and 20s. And now they're hitting 30 and 40 and having those same experiences.
Yeah.
But a lot of people that haven't learned how to train in a productive way are at the whim of reacting to their body and feeling like, and there are major asterisks. There are lots of conditions out there where people truly do have conditions where they need professional help. But barring disease, illness, or some other kind of condition, if you're able to go to the gym, but I think you hit the nail on the head. If you're just constantly on that cycle of, or saying to yourself, or every New Year's, you're like, okay, I'm going to lose the 10 pounds of Christmas weight. And it's just the same 10 pounds, or it's this bigger and bigger number every year. And you're just kind of repeating the same pattern while you continue to lose physical ability. And you say your metabolism's slowing down when we know that your metabolism isn't slowing down. You're just, to your point, you have less muscle. Those to me sound like those that don't have physical freedom.
Yeah.
That it's kind of sad that, you see people now that are on this long, slow glide slope of what Dr. Sullivan has described as the sick aging phenotype, where you're just kind of the long glide slope retreating into less and less health, less and less functionality, into a really not fun way to go out, versus maintaining as much functionality as possible and then just hitting the cliff on the last day, ideally. Or as I like to say, I'm going with one final skydive, hit the ocean at terminal velocity, call it a day, right after squatting 3x5.
Yes.
For 400.
For 400.
At 101 years old.
That would be pretty rad. Yeah. So I would say just keep training. You're never not training, even though it looks very different over many, many years. You are always training, and prove it. Prove it.
If you don't feel like you have physical freedom, where should they go, Niki?
Barbelllogic.com. Set up a call with us if you have some questions. Barbelllogic.com/experience. We'd be happy to walk you through what that looks like, and happy to learn more about where you're coming from. Maybe what's been stopping you in the past, and get you on your first really wonderful 6 months where things are pretty neat. Yeah, make some really fun changes in that first 6 months.
That 18 to 24 months is amazing. I mean, I was telling you, if you just look at pure percentage of progress, to this day, the first 18 to 24 months I had with my coach is like 90% of the absolute weight gain that I made on my lifts.
Totally.
I mean, I continued to add another 100 pounds on my squat and my deadlift, but it took like another 5 to 10 years.
Yep.
It gets a little sad to think about that. But I am proud of that progress, but just, man, talk about a fun time.
You have to become a little more stoic about it.
When like every Friday you're like, hit another PR, yay, hit another PR, woohoo, there's another major milestone, there's another plate milestone.
Yep.
I go back to my Facebook page from that era, and it's like every session, every week, posting about a PR. Those are fun times.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll be here next week. Thank you again for listening to Beast Overburden. If you have any questions, send us an email. We were thinking maybe we would do a big Q&A from questions about the previous series and this one. So if you have a question, we would love to hear it. podcast@barbell-logic.com, or you can even send us something on Instagram. Really want to know what you're thinking about. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.